Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special meeting for the Dearborn Public School. It's April 14th, and it's 6:07 p.m. I call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Trustee Bazey.
Here.
Trustee D'Ambrosio.
Here.
Trustee Moza.
Present.
Trustee Petlicoff.
Here.
Trustee Subah.
Here.
Trustee Zahar here. President Al-Jahmi.
Here. All right, so next item.
Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So next item,
We don't deliberate.
The next item is a discussion. We have two superintendent interviews today. The first one is with Mr. Mike Esseily, who is the Executive Director of Special Populations in Dearborn Public Schools.
all right.
He's coming. Okay, great.
So, good evening. On behalf of the Dearborn Public School, I would like to welcome Mike Esseily to the interview for the position of superintendent. Mike Esseily is Executive Director of Special Population for the Dearborn Public Schools. I will take a few minutes to briefly describe our format. The interview may take up to 90 minutes. Time will be kept on the monitor. There will be 22 questions from the board. Toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give you an opportunity to ask questions of the board and to make closing statements. We will let you know of time if time is becoming an issue and there's a need to pick up the pace of the responses. For those present for this interview, we welcome and encourage your feedback rather than making public comments about our candidates. We ask that you use the QR code provided for this purpose. I think we might have it by the door, and it's available somewhere.
We have Mr. Stonen
Okay,
here to help if
he's
you need help
presented.
with that.
Also, the
Madam Chair,
task,
President Al-Jahmi, just so people know too, in case anybody came to do a public comment, we have a Saturday meeting where we are narrowing down the 6 candidates, and at that point you can also come to make comments at a microphone, 11 a.m. on Saturday right here.
okay, thank you. Also, the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Education. As the elected representative of our community, we value and seriously consider the input of our stakeholder in the process. In saying that, I will start off with the opening question. Mr. Esseily, while we have the opportunity to review your application material, audience members have not. Please briefly review your background and share what caused you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
Thank you very much, President Al-Jahmi and members of the board, for this opportunity to interview for the Superintendency of Dearborn Public Schools. I'm truly humbled and honored to be here today. I'd also like to thank my family who's in attendance, who have been a wonderful support of mine throughout this entire journey. And I'd also publicly, for the first time, like to thank them for putting up with me for being a Miami Dolphins fan all these years. Okay. I am the epitome of this district. I often, when I share my story, start with the year 2003. Since 1986, that is the only year I haven't been affiliated with the Dearborn Public School System. Whether it was a preschool student at McDonald Elementary or a proud graduate of the Fortson High School class of 2000. A Henry Ford College alum or a university student who did his pre- and student teaching here in Dearborn. In 2005, I was employed by the Dearborn Public School System as a substitute teacher. And later in 2007, I was employed again as a special education teacher. As a special education teacher, I learned the importance of how to deliver solid instruction to our most marginalized of learners and how important relationships were for our students, families, and colleagues. 2014 was a full circle moment for me when I became the assistant principal at Laurie School, the middle school that I attended. That is where I learned the day-to-day operations of schools, what sound instructional leadership looked and felt like, and how the decisions of central office impact school every single day. 2016, I transitioned my role into central office leadership. First as a special education coordinator, then 11 months later as the special education director. In 2019, I assumed my current role as executive director of special populations. And this year, my current role, I expanded my responsibilities. Not only do I oversee the day-to-day operations of the special education department, EL department, and adult education, I also now oversee CTE, DCMST, and the Henry Ford College Partnership. While all my experiences have prepared me for this role, I feel that the role of executive director prepared me the most. It taught me about every department in central office and how it's important that we're all aligned. I have a very unique perspective and understand what it takes to educate a preschool student all the way through a post-secondary student looking for outcomes, and how each level feeds into another. I also have been blessed with the opportunity to work in every single feeder in this school, with every single principal, helping align resources and supports so they can be successful. I'm going to transition into my why. This is the district that took a painfully shy child and made him into the leader before you today. And because of that, Patty, who entered our district not speaking a few years ago, I was able to co-present with him last year at the State Board of Education about his experiences in our district and how we've helped him. I would love nothing more than to work with all of you to build and align systems that maximize the potential of each child and ensure that no child ever goes unseen.
All right, thank you. The next question. Based on what you know about our district, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term priorities we must address?
Okay.
And how do your background and skill position you to lead that work?
Thank you, Trustee El-Jahmi. I think we can all equally agree that infrastructure is a priority right now in our district. We have some schools that are over 100 years old, and some of them are in some serious need of maintenance and upgrade. However, I'm going to cheat a little bit and I'm going to pivot right now. I'm not going to talk about infrastructure, but I want to talk about other priorities I feel are critical right now. The first one I'm going to talk about is our proficiency in literacy. In 3rd grade, about 51% of our students in Dearborn schools are reading proficiently. By the time they get to the 7th grade, that drops down to about 38% of our students. While I'm excited about some of the things we're doing right now in the district, such as a resource that includes the science of reading. In addition to that, training our teachers on different methods to deliver instruction. I believe that we can still do some other things. So when in my current role right now, one of the first things we tackled was literacy. What we did was we trained all of our teachers in brain-friendly reading, which is an approach to teach the science of reading. And that was great because it was transformational, because other departments ended up training their staff with that specific strategy. But coinciding with that, we developed a specially designed instruction guidebook. And within this book, it went very detailed about how the brain learns and the impact of the learner in the classroom. One specific area we looked at was working memory. For those who don't know, working memory is when the child gets information, it's the information he's getting while he's processing to connect the dots, okay? Right now in our district, about 80% of our students are economically disadvantaged and 45% of them are ML or EL learners. Those learners, as a byproduct, their working memory comes in a little bit more foggy. The muscle isn't weaker, it's just more foggy. They have other things going on. As an EL learner, you're trying to figure out what words mean. As a student that's economically disadvantaged, I know Trustee Bazzi, you mentioned it yesterday, there may be food insecurity. So as a result, our teachers are doing all the right things. They're doing great things, but what's happening is kids aren't connecting the dots. So I'm actually right now part of what we call letters training. Letters training was a state mandate. I know other states adopted it to raise their literacy scores. It is the first reading program that I've gone through that actually talks about brain science and how important it is. So that is one thing that I think that we can do, and another way we can strengthen. And again, I think we're doing some great things. We're on the right path, but how do we strengthen all this to make sense? The second thing is the complexity of needs of the students that are coming in. We're seeing more students with behavioral and mental health challenges than ever before. It is imperative that we continue to have a strong multi-tiered system of supports in this district, a strong MPSS system. MPSS is not just about instruction. It's about teaching the whole child. It's about that behavioral health piece. It is where, as part of the Tier 3 process, you're getting a bunch of wonderful educators around the table to figure out exactly what the child needs to help support them. Mental health. Today, there's more students than ever coming to us with anxiety and depression. That's going to impact learning. It's the reality of it. Now, I'm very happy over the last 10 years through some competitive grants, we've been able to more than double the number of social workers in the district. It's very important. We've also been able to ensure that there's more access to mental health. We actually have mental health providers on site right now in our schools. And obviously, a lot of you know about Care Solace. Whoever is superintendent in this district, that must continue to be a critical area that we work on. And then finally, it starts with us at central office. We must be aligned. We do some great things around here. However, does it all make sense? Does it all connect together? Okay. The more we can align our systems to ensure that we're meeting the needs of every single student, the more that we win. That's when we support our principals and we support our teachers who are doing amazing things in the classroom. So just to reiterate, I know infrastructure is very, very important, and I'm here ready to lead whenever the decision's made on that. However, my 3 areas of priority right now would probably be literacy, behavioral mental health, and alignment within central office.
Thank you. The next question is, tell us about a time when you led through a crisis or significant change. What decision did you make? What was the outcome? And what did you learn that you would apply here?
Okay. This is going to be very, very hard to discuss because I'm going to try to keep some things. I don't want to share too much information to identify anybody right now. But a few years ago, this actually hit the media. We dealt with a situation where there was some malpractice in the classroom. It's probably the hardest, most difficult situation I've ever had to deal with in my entire career. Obviously, the parents were very, very upset. The staff member felt a specific way. So we obviously had to take action as a district. We immediately put the staff member on leave, and we worked. Now, the situation was one thing. We handled that. But I was more concerned about what actually happened that led up to the situation. So the first thing that I did was, this was a very emotionally charged situation where I called the parents in, had to have a conversation with them. It was not easy. Probably one of the most difficult conversations I've ever had in my entire life, my entire career. They were not happy with me, nor should they have been. So from right there and then, I learned the importance of early communication and transparency, no matter what the situation is. And I also learned the fact that you're not going to be perfect, and when you're not perfect, don't try to hide behind it. Okay, just be upfront. The second thing that we had to do is we had to look at our system as a whole. Okay, what was going on? What led to this specifically happen? So as a result, we were more creative with some of the people that we hired with their certifications. We thought outside the box to ensure that all of our staff, no matter the situation, are trained to their utmost.
Ahart, your turn.
Trustees Ahart.
Okay, Mr. Esseily, you're going to be 3 questions with me too. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community. Specifically, share an example of how you built a productive relationship with a resistant stakeholder group.
Okay. Thank you. So I think relationships are everything, in my opinion. Relationships is what builds trust. Without trust, you can't move a system forward. The key to relationships, though, is always actively listening to people, no matter what the situation may be. So I'm going to kind of go through each stakeholder group right now to talk to you how I would build relationships, and I'm going to tell you with the last stakeholder group some of the challenges I had and what we did. It starts with you guys as a board. What is your relationship going to be with me as the next superintendent? This is what you're going to get from me. You're going to get proactive communication. You're going to get the full story, all the details, to ensure that you can make informed decision no matter what the situation is. And hopefully we're going to have a no-surprise culture. Now, this is what I'm going to tell you. I can't promise you no surprises, but if you are surprised, I promise you I would have been surprised as well. With our teachers, I think it's imperative to have two-way communication. As much as we're communicating, as much as we're speaking, as much as we're trying to empower our teachers, you better listen, okay? Our teachers do great things in the classroom. They have great, unique perspectives that sometimes, as an administrator, you're juggling with a lot of different things, and you don't understand what the impact is. So it is critical. With my staff, they know that they can always come to me. You know, I hate using buzzwords, but I have an open door policy. And here's the thing. There's no situation that's too small either. What you may, you know, as an administrator, sometimes you're juggling 1,001 things. So when people come to you and want to speak, you have to assume it's important enough to them. So you have to communicate with them. In addition to that, with staff, if we're dealing with total full staff communication, I think it's important to be clear. And if it's a situation that impacts them, I think regular updates become critical as well. With parents, when I first came into the special education department, this was an area I believe I was struggling with. I think there was a lack of trust, not me, the department. There was a lack of trust between parents and the special education department. I felt it. If I was at a community meeting, not many people would come up to me, kind of odd. We were dealing with it here. If you were on the board at the time, you were dealing with it here. We had parents, it was like almost the special ed show at times, and that's the way that I felt, and it was very, very hard. So I had to make a conscious decision, and that decision was simple. I was going to go out of my way to make sure that parents knew and felt that they were heard, whether it was over coffee, whether if I was at community events, making sure that I took the extra step, whether it was knowing one of their children was sick or whatever the situation may be, visiting the home, visiting the hospitals. I had to make sure our relationships were solid if I ever wanted to move forward with any specific group. And those are some of the things that I believe I did. Also, in addition to that, we now have a special education PTA. I believe we're probably the only district in Michigan that has a special education PTA that provides for voice with the parents. So the reality is relationships are something you're always building on. They're always ongoing. And it's not a transactional thing. It's got to be done with the best intentions that you want what's best for people.
Okay, I regret to inform you, I actually have 4 questions with me.
Oh,
Sorry.
you're good. No regret at all.
So just one so far, and they're all about district relations. The second one is, give an example of community leadership you provided outside of day-to-day district duties, and how did it benefit community support for the district?
Okay. I can give a couple examples, but one example that really comes to mind right now is the inclusive parks. In fact, I know somebody who's in this room right now that I worked very closely with him on those exclusive parks. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, oh, I was the lead or I was the face. No, I was a support. But I believe what ended up happening was I met with a couple of parents that meant a lot to them, that they wanted more inclusive parks in the city. As a result, one thing that I did, and you're going to see, I'm going to give all of you this wonderful professional binder in here. It's going to have a couple letters in here, and that's one of them. I wrote a letter to the city council in support of inclusive parks. And years later, the inclusive parks were here. So that was a wonderful thing. Another thing, though, that's very important, and I wanted to save this, but I'm going to give this example right now, is it's part of my job, but it's really not. I had the opportunity to lead an EL advocacy group at the state level. The group consisted of lobbyists, it consisted of EL directors, it consisted of superintendents all across the state. And what we were doing is we were meeting on a periodic basis for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to strengthen EL services in the state, but two, we wanted funding to do that. As a result, as the leader of that group, we actually wrote a letter to the governor of Michigan. And then months later, not even months later, weeks later, the governor proposed her budget, which included an equity model, meaning the more EL learners or the more needs they have, the more money district gets. And it was a wonderful win for us. It's very exciting. In fact, it impacts Dearborn because I believe next year, if this goes through, we're slated to get about $6 million more. So both of those things I think were very, very exciting. I have a third example too, but I don't want to run out of time, so we'll go from there.
Okay, my next question is, how do we create a district-wide culture of continuous improvement, aligning our actions to achieve strategic outcomes?
Okay. I opened up with talking about alignment. I think it's critical that we're aligned. It's critical that we have a solid vision and mission that everybody understands, and it's critical that everyone feels that they are a part of that mission and vision. They can see themselves and understand how their work connects to that vision and mission. I think that's the first thing. The second thing, as leaders, we have to champion the vision and mission. We have to celebrate the wins. We have to celebrate our people when they produce outcomes for us. And the third thing, which I think is critical, okay? We can't just say we're data informed. We have to really be data informed. Data is our friend, and it starts here with us as leaders. We need to review data some more, and then listen to the data. Sometimes data is going to tell you, hey, you're doing some great things. Sometimes it's telling you, hey, you're not doing what you need to be doing. So you have to have the courage enough to understand that and pivot, whatever the situation may be. I think, and then finally, outcomes and accountability, okay? In special education, one of the first things that I took on, and I still remember this department meeting, is I got in front of staff and I said, you know, I don't want you to worry about compliance. Sorry, Trustee Solve, I know you love compliance. I don't want you to worry about compliance. And what I meant by that was, I don't want you to worry what boxes you check on the IEP. If we get a complaint because of that, I'll handle it. I want you to focus on teaching and learning. We want outcomes because guess what? If parents know their kids are learning, you're not filing a complaint because you checked the wrong box on the IEP. I promise you that. And that is a culture of outcomes. And then with that comes a culture of accountability. And sometimes we think of accountability as going to the HR office or whatever the situation is. Now, that may be part of it, but that's not the culture of accountability I'm talking about. The culture of accountability I'm talking about is we're all pulling together and we're holding each other accountable to ensure we're doing what we can do for the betterment of all students. And then obviously you support your staff. Our teachers, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but they work very, very hard. We have to continue to support them so they can continue to do the great things they're doing within the classroom.
All right, the last question with me under district relations is, how have you obtained and utilized stakeholder feedback to modify district priorities? Provide a recent example and the impact it provided.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time?
Sure.
Since it's your last question, I want
Sure.
to repeat the
Sure.
question once more.
How have you obtained and utilized stakeholder feedback to modify district priorities? Provide a recent example and the impact it provided.
Okay. In 2016, we had about 9 classrooms for students with autism. Today, we have over 30 classrooms with students with autism. Students with autism are in every single class in our district right now, willing to bet on that. Students with autism are wonderful, wonderful individuals, but sometimes our approach has to be a little bit different. So one thing that I was continuously talking to with all stakeholders, whether it was with the union, whether it was with principals, whether it was with staff, is we need more strategies to help assist our students with autism. So we got to work. We rolled up our sleeves with my team, and we started to develop systems. Some of the systems we developed were one was a paraprofessional university, where we actually had a system where paraprofessionals were being trained, especially the ones who are working with the students with autism to ensure that they have the utmost of skill. The second thing is we were bringing trainings into the district. One of the bright moments for me was a couple years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, when our keynote speaker was a board-certified behavioral analyst whose role was specifically behaviors related to autism. And I still remember the survey after that opening day PD and how much people appreciated it and loved it. Talk about things that were really, really transformational and providing people with what they specifically need. In addition to that, we've contracted with other people around the state to continue to grow our skill set to handle complex behaviors, whatever they may be. Sorry.
Mr. Esseily, welcome. I get the next 3 questions.
There you go. 3 questions?
3 questions for me, not 4. Political awareness is the topic.
Okay, great.
As our superintendent, how would you advocate for political action that benefits our district and public education throughout our state?
Thank you. I answered part of that question already, I believe. The thing is you have to develop relationship with some of your legislators. The legislators are making the decision, they're bringing the dollars in. So you have to ensure you have good, solid, trusting relationships with your legislators. Also, you have to be proactive with it. I spoke a little bit about the EL advocacy group, but right now I'm going to shift to my 3rd example. I was blessed with the opportunity a few years ago to go down to Washington, D.C. and advocate for more Individuals Disability Education Act, IDEA dollars. That is a federally funded mandate that supports our students with disabilities. IDEA, since its inception in the mid-'70s, has been grossly underfunded. So I got to go lobby, speak to actual legislators, senators and representatives, I believe, were in the group, about the importance of increasing funding. So I think that's going to be critical. I think it comes down to being proactive with some of your advocacy efforts and making sure you have relationships with the people who are making decisions who are going to bring some dollars in.
Superintendents are often faced with making decisions when there is no clear right answer and the community is divided. Please describe a time when you faced such a decision, including how you approached the decision-making process and how you worked to build understanding and support for the direction you chose.
Welcome to the world of special education. I often make some very, very challenging and difficult situations. Many of them are involved or around student placement. Whether students are moving from a special education classroom to a general education classroom, or usually vice versa, from general education classrooms to special education classrooms. In special education, it's very, very nuanced. There's laws with the federal IDEA statute and the Michigan Administrative Rules of Special Education. You also have very emotionally charged situations. Sometimes you can have, in one meeting, 5 different perspectives. And in addition to that, you're trying to always, no matter the situation, balance and do what's right. But the heaviest thing is sometimes moving students from a general education placement to a special education placement, you are changing their educational trajectory sometimes, meaning you're moving them from earning a diploma to earning a certificate of completion. That weighs heavy on you. Now, you're also dealing with a lot of other, I know I said the word nuances, but a lot of other nuances as well is, what is the data telling us? How often is this? And if we intervene and do different things, can we possibly keep a child in their least restrictive environment? Least restrictive environment means being with neurotypical peers as much as possible. So you can imagine those situations. I've had to deal with many, many situations like that. I don't want to go into one specific one, but I can tell you one had an additional layer where I had parents emailing and calling me about a specific student that wasn't their own child, advocating for me to remove a student from a classroom. Those are very, very hard. And the reality is you can understand every perspective. But ultimately, what you have to do is you have to do what's right. That's why, I often kid and I say any one decision I make upsets about 75 to 80% of the people. But I'm okay with that because at the end of the day, we're in this to make right decisions. And sometimes these right decisions, they're not easy to make. And they come with a lot of pressure and a lot of other things too.
What impact do standardized testing requirements have on teaching and learning in our state?
Okay. This is a hot topic right here. And I don't know if there's a right way to answer it, but the reality of where we are right now is standardized tests is part of how people grade us as a school district. I know that we have to be very, very careful to ever use one measure to say that a child is learning or a child is growing or not, but that is kind of the climate that we're in. I wish, that we can use multiple measures and different things besides just standardized tests, but the reality is it brings a lot of stress. It also brings the risk of sometimes teaching to a test, which we have to be very, very, very careful about. But ultimately, it is what we're measured by. So what we have to do is we have to continue to grow our skill sets to ensure that we're teaching for outcomes for students, do what we believe is best, develop that culture we talked about, and then I believe standardized tests will take care of themselves.
Sir Esseily, welcome. My category is leadership attributes. First question, and I have 3 questions. First question is, please describe your typical leadership style and share how it is effective for those that you serve.
Okay. I believe some of the administrators that report to me are here today, so they would probably be better to answer this question, but I know I have to answer it for myself. I believe in servant leadership, another buzzword, but I live it. I believe in collaborative leadership. I believe in leadership to where everyone can be open and honest with one another. I often tell my team that if I have an idea, your job is to push back and find holes in my idea. That is the kind of leadership that I believe in. However, with that being said, I believe I'm also a very empathetic. I do lead with empathy. I do truly try to seek to understand, but I also have high expectations. And with my high expectations, with the support that I provide, I do want to make sure that our leaders are doing what they need to do. We work with kids. It is critical when you work with kids that you do the best you can and you have the best people possible, okay? I do believe 2 things could be true at the same time, meaning that you can be a good person, but just not very good at your job either. So to kind of take that, I feel like I took this question somewhere maybe it didn't need to go, but I want to make sure that I get that in, that we do lead with empathy. I work closely with my team. I believe in align in one vision, but at the same time, we hold very high expectations to ensure we're meeting the needs of every child.
Second question for me, and 12th question of the night. What is the most difficult decision you've made in your educational career? Describe your decision-making process.
Okay. Well, this kind of leads into what I just said, so it's a perfect segue. So, kind of on the, I believe that 2 things could be true at the same time. I had somebody who was reporting to me who was in a leadership position a few years ago. He was a great person. He did some really, really fine things, very, very smart. However, unfortunately, the outcomes weren't where we expected as a district. So I had to make my first difficult decision, which was having a difficult conversation. After that difficult conversation, I tried to support this person. Met with them regularly, assigned a mentor, did everything we can do to help build up that person and support them. At the end of the day, I believe a leader should also be judged based on how well people who report to him are doing and how much they are growing as well. Unfortunately, after a while, we still didn't see a change in outcomes. So I had to make the decision, another difficult decision, to include our human resources department. Fast forward through everything, the person ended up leaving the district. But prior to that, though, prior to when they were here, the community got involved a little bit. I was getting some emails from parents, from staff members who kind of caught wind of the situation. But I always knew that we had to do what was right regardless of the situation. So now fast forward, the backfill of the person came in, somebody that we identified as who we thought had a great potential. Outcomes changed in the program, a lot of respect for this specific individual, and really has been a huge part into the direction change of the department. So I think that was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, but I kind of have a rule. I know difficult conversations are hard, but to me, what's even more difficult is students not getting what they need.
Next question is, how do you inspire and engage the entire school community in support of the district's vision and mission?
Could you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, sure. How do you inspire and engage the entire school community in support of the district's vision and mission?
So it's kind of like the question I answered a little bit before about everyone needs to be part of the vision and mission, and we have to champion it. But when I say champion it, I mean by our actions. Visions and missions, you see them all over the place. You can go to any website and you'll see a vision statement and a mission statement. Is it there just because we have to have a vision or mission statement, or do we believe in it, and is everything we do aligned to that vision and mission? Typically, your vision and mission is connected to your strategic plan. Your strategic plan has to be your constitution within the district. And everything you do within your district, every resource you spend, every professional development you provide has to be aligned to that. And that's what ends up happening. That's how you at least get the alignment for the vision and mission. And then I think you have to make sure that people feel valued and heard. I think that's such a critical part. Speaking to people, making sure they know what their role is within the organization, making sure they know that they're valued within the organization are very, very critical pieces to that. And then obviously celebrating successes and ensuring that you continue to be data informed. And here's one of the most critical areas too that I think of. Less is more sometimes. And what I mean by that is we have to also be careful of putting too many things with our vision and mission, too many initiatives, which cause initiative fatigue, and it causes a very, very hard time for our leaders, our teachers, and everybody around to follow what's going on. And then when people all feel like they're part of it, ultimately, I think you can do some great things with it.
Trustee D'Ambrosio?
Mr. Esseily, your questions from me will be on instructions and curriculum. Describe one program or strategy you led that narrowed the achievement gap for economically and disadvantaged and historically underperforming students.
Thank you. I want to start out this question by saying, to start, within this district, so 82% of the kids fall under special populations in this district. This is a huge area for the Dearborn Public School System. And it's also an area to where I feel we can continue to strengthen. We've done some great things, but I feel like we're not doing enough. We have to do more to help our students who fall under any subgroup or any special populations. That's the first thing that I really want to start by talking about. Now, one thing that I believe we strengthened in my current role is the co-teaching model. Co-teaching is when you have two teachers in a classroom. One of the teachers is the general education teacher who is in charge of the curriculum, and the other teacher, whoever it may be, whatever the specialist is there to provide supported instruction to students in the classroom. When I came into this role, we used to define great co-teaching as I can't tell the difference between the general education teacher and the specialist. I kind of understood that because we wanted both teachers to be actively engaged in the model. However, as a board who oversees a budget, you probably don't want two people doing the same exact thing either. So what we decided to do was we really decided to revamp our model and program, and we did this by introducing specially designed instruction. And we also gave parameters to what co-teaching had to look like. For example, we no longer want more than 20% of the time in a co-taught class to be whole group. We want to see a lot of small group in there. And on top of that, when you are seeing the small group, we want to see the specially designed instruction for the learners that needed the specially designed instruction, needed a little bit more to get through a specific lesson. As a result, I'll tell you, we started this probably, it was a little bit before COVID. As a result, afterwards, for the first time that at least I can research, the special education department received a passing score in graduation rates for their students. Special education gets a report card annually on how well we do in each category. The very first category is graduation rates. That was a huge area of pride and celebration for our entire staff, specifically our high school staff. Another example I can think of is when I came into this role, we were identified as significant disproportionality by the state, meaning we were suspending students with IEPs at a higher rate than any other group in the district. As a result, we developed a plan through the restorative practices model. That's also where you see some of our student responsibility technicians as well. That is still in effect to today. And what we ended up doing was we eliminated the identification rates through the restorative framework and figuring out other ways of alternative discipline as well. Now, with that said, those are two successful stories that I can share. However, I'm very, very well aware of where we are as a district and where we need to go as well.
Next question. Reading at grade level by third grade is a critical milestone for future academic success. What strategies will you support to ensure all students achieve grade level literacy by the end of the third grade?
I said this the other day, and I'll say it again today. Reading, we have to start treating reading as a civil right. Our students, we have the responsibility to ensure that our students are reading, and I think it's a multifaceted approach. First, kudos to our district team right now for adopting a new resource that includes the science of reading. I think that's a great first step. I think a little bit earlier I spoke a little bit about my plan on how we can start understanding also how the brain functions and how that impacts learning through possibly letters training. Now, letters training is very, very long. It is also very intensive. However, we're going to have to figure out a way how to support our teachers if obviously the entire cabinet and the board agrees to train our teachers on some of these things, because these are critical areas. The second thing is we must continue to have a strong MTSS process, specifically with our interventions within MTSS. They have to be very timely interventions. They have to make sense as well. And we have to continue to follow through with some things too. In addition to that, I think also community engagement. How can we continue to engage our community, especially with our kiddos, our future students, our preschool students, to one, have preschool opportunities, but also what are some things we can do to partner with some community organizations? I know some of the board members are in the Early Coalition. That would be a great segue there. But how do we make sure that our entire community knows the importance of reading, and what can we put in place for our community to be a community that values reading? And when you start doing that, I think that can kind of trickle into your schools, along with some of the great teaching and great strategies we do. Also, what are we investing with our interventions? When are we giving our interventions? And how are we doing it? We have to make sure that by the time our students are in third grade, they're at reading level. I know the dyslexia law has some components to some of these different things that are critical to a district. I know we are in compliance with the dyslexia law, which is great, but we need to move to outcomes now.
What are the most urgent challenges for special education in our region, and how should these challenges be addressed?
Thank you. This one may be a little bit challenging for me. I do want to start by saying, within special education, if you ask me, one of the greatest challenges we have right now, and I'm looking at it from a systems approach, is we have to move from a culture of compliance to a culture of outcomes. I think it's critical, and it has to start at the state level. Worrying about paperwork and not doing what's right for kids and making sure that our wonderful teachers have all the tools and resources that they can have to ensure that we're getting outcomes. If you ask me, that is the most critical area that we must look at from a state perspective. Locally here within Dearborn, I think, a huge challenge, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is just the growth with some of the behavioral disabilities. I think that's taking a toll on the system. It's growing a little bit faster than I think the system can really keep up with. So we must ensure to stay ahead of it. We must ensure to keep being proactive and making sure we're hiring the right people and the right supports to help all of our educators get through whatever challenge that they may have.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, Mr. Esseily.
Good evening.
Glad to see you made it through last night.
Right? You know what? I'm at 47 minutes. I'm not doing too bad.
You're not doing, we're on question number 17, so
Okay,
you know
there
where
we
you're at. All right, I've got finances. Please describe your experience developing and managing budgets, including the largest budget you have overseen and the strategies you use to maintain a balanced budget.
Okay. I believe I oversee the largest budget in the district. My budget alone in special education is $80 million. If you connect that with the EL budget, an additional $70 million, that's $150 million. I think the only person that's probably got me beat is Tom Wall, and he's the CFO. He should have me beat. A couple of things that we do, a couple of things that we make sure that we do is we have a checks and balance system. We make sure that every single dollar that we spend, one, we're in compliance with every dollar we spend. A lot of our money comes from many different sources. We get federal money, we get state money, we get county money, we got grant money. We have to make sure we're always in compliance. So we have systems of checks and balances within my department, but also systems that we've connected with our operations department as well. So I think that's first and foremost. Secondly is we have quarterly reviews. We're always looking at the budget, making sure I'm underspent. I work closely with my guy named Samir in the office. I'm regularly asking him, hey, where are we with the budget? Do I have enough money to send this teacher to a professional development or whatever the situation may be? That's just an example, but we do regularly meet to ensure we have a balanced budget. And I'm happy to report that I don't think the superintendents ever had to come to any of you and say that I overspent money and they needed more money. So that's a win. But overall, as a district, we also, as an executive cabinet, look at the full budget, the $480 million. And I think, our CFO, Tom Wall, does a wonderful job each year telling us most likely scenario, worst case scenario, and best case scenario, right? Whenever we're not in the red, that's always a good thing usually. That means we don't have to make cuts or whatever the situation may be. Also, kudos to this board that's got us right now at about a 15% fund balance, which is critical and almost 10 points higher than what the threshold is for the state. So I think ultimately a balanced budget is having responsible spending, aligning it to your strategic plan to ensure that you're getting the most out of your dollars and you're producing outcomes, and a checks and balance system. I think that's critical.
Okay, how would you ensure that our district spending is aligned with our priorities?
Yeah, I think that's critical, right? Your strategic plan. I'm going to say it again. It's your constitution. It's got to be aligned with our goals. The 90-day plan I'm going to give you right now, one of the very first things that I would love to do, or that I will do, not I would love to do, I will do, is I'm going to be meeting with some of our cabinet members, including our CFO, so we get a deep understanding of what's being spent, where it's being spent, and if it's producing outcomes. Now, I don't want to scare anybody. I learned long ago through some of my leadership that you don't tear a fence down until you know why it was built up. So we'll be asking the right questions, but at the same time, I think it's going to be a great opportunity for us to restart relooked at the system, and make sure that everything we're spending in and out is going to where it needs to be, which is to help our students.
All right, and my final question. What is your experience with millage renewals, bond campaigns, and sinking fund proposals? Share one campaign you led or supported and the factors that determined its success or failure.
Okay, outstanding. Fortunately, I do have experience. I have experience with 1.5 bond, and I say a half because this current bond right now, or the bond proposal, we don't know where it's going yet, and then a millage. I was part of the cabinet in 2019 when we went out for a bond as a community. My role was I was able to go to some community forums, answer some questions from stakeholders. I also was directly involved with the planning because one of the initiatives on that bond was a brand new special education facility, which we so desperately needed and still need. Lessons learned. I think everybody worked very, very hard on the bond. And I wasn't in a lot of the conversations, but I can kind of give you my perspective of where hopefully in the future we can improve some of the outcomes with the bond. The very first thing is we have to make sure we're paying attention to detail. Every word we say, everything that goes out, we have to pay attention to detail. Check it once, check it twice, check it 3 times. In addition to that, community feedback, more community feedback, and more community feedback. People change their mind. They can tell you they're supporting their bond in September, but then come November, they're not supporting it anymore. So continue to listen to the community, continue to get community feedback to ensure that you're making the right decisions. Now I'm going to fast forward to 2024 with the successful millage. That was awesome. It passed at about 72%. I was more heavily involved with the millage than I was with the bond in 2019. With the millage, I remember that I was involved again with some more community outreach, meeting with different stakeholders within the community. I was also very involved with the superintendent at the time for bringing a private advocacy group in to help support the millage. I think that's a critical area that you have to do whenever you're passing a millage or bond. You have to get people who are going to advocate for it because we can't as a district, and you have to get the right people to advocate for it who understand the community and who can reach many stakeholders within the community. Now, with this bond, I've been directly involved throughout the entire process. I've had the opportunity to be blessed to be in meetings with some of you. I'm very, very aware of the different proposals that are out there. I'm also very, very aware of where we are right now with the bond, with some of the different proposals and some of the different phases. And I am going to utter Trustee Mosip's words from last night, and I promise you, I planned on saying this before you said it. What excites me most about this bond is just the equity piece, right? It's going to produce equity for our entire community, which is great, and our community deserves it, in the case this board does decide to put the bond up this year.
All right, good evening, Mr. Esseily. How do you work with building and district administrators to establish a high-performing team while balancing support, autonomy, and accountability? Provide us with an example of when you built such a team, including the specific steps you took to ensure its success.
I love my special education team. Okay, I believe this is a prime example, and this is kind of what we did with the team. So obviously it starts with me. It's clear expectation. It's 3 words that we decided were going to be the vision behind closed doors. It's whatever it takes. And what does whatever it takes mean? It means that whatever it takes to support a teacher, whatever it takes to support a student, whatever it takes to support a family or a parent. That was our vision. We set that. It was crystal clear. Everybody bought into it, and we kept rowing in the same direction. We have very collaborative meetings to where sometimes we don't always agree. That is extremely healthy for an admin team. Now I want to kind of step back and go to overall as a district where I feel we have to continue to move forward. The first thing we have to do is we have to make sure we're developing crystal clear systems and a vision that everybody understands and everybody could buy into. I think that's step number 1 before anything. The second thing you want to do is you want to make sure you do come across as supportive, not come across, you are supportive to your building principals. What do your building principals need? You need to be cognizant of that, whether it's resources, whether it's training, whatever the situation may be. Your building principals know their building better than anybody else. They should have the leeway or the autonomy to ensure to ask for specific things or know what they have to ensure that they are maximizing outcomes. We got to let our people do what we hired them to do. I think that's critical. However, you have to have high expectations at the same time, okay? You have to be very direct and honest. So when you have a data-informed culture of outcomes, I believe you look at data, and data not just test scores. Data is a lot of different things. Data could be how the community feels, how your teachers feel. And you have to be able to ensure that you're supporting people to ensure that they have a high culture within their building. I think that is another critical area too. So it starts with systems, then you support, and then if we're seeing that some things aren't working well in the building, we should know that at central office, okay? Obviously, you want to make sure your building leaders know that as well. And when we start seeing that, we should come in and provide more additional support to try to help people. At the same time, having conversations and trying to figure out what's going on. From there, after support, you have to make sure that people know that students are going to be first and foremost with everything. And however, again, I'm going to reiterate, our culture has to be a culture of building people up and a culture of high outcomes. And I believe that when everyone is rowing in the same direction, you'll get that. But at the same time, having difficult conversations may be part of all of this.
Question 21. How would you assess the culture and climate of our district, and what steps would you take as superintendent to positively influence and strengthen it?
When I think of culture and climate, or climate and culture, I think sometimes we use them interchangeably. To me, they're two separate things. To me, a climate is how you feel, a culture is who you are and what you do. I do believe it's very possible. Again, two things could be true at the same time. You can have a very high climate, but a poor culture. And sometimes the other way around. I've seen it where you have a very high culture. You know who you are. You're very outcome driven, but there's a poor climate. The best systems that we operate within the district, whether it's at a district level, department level, or school level, have high climate and high culture. People feel valued. People feel respected. And there's a culture, there's a very, very high culture of outcomes and excellence. Prime example of this was in my assistant principal experience. When I was at Laurie School, I saw a building that had high climate, high culture. How would I know that? Okay. They didn't need the assistant principal or the principal to come in and tell them what to do. They were driven. They were driven because they developed a culture of excellence. They held themselves accountable to ensuring that students were moving. Okay? I think that is so imperative. And I tell you, the word accountability could mean many, many things to many different people. The best accountability you have, though, is when we're holding ourselves accountable to move our district forward.
How have you handled conflicts with labor relations or collective bargaining? Provide one example, citing your role in the outcome.
Yeah. As Executive Director of Special Populations, specifically in our special education department, when I came in, we had over 40 vacancies. It was a very, very challenging time for us. Special ed overall, I think I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, it's a critical area of need within the entire state. Not many staff members are going into special education. So as a result, we had to regularly work with the union to ensure that we were putting some contract language in that one, not only helped attract teachers, but help retain them. One of the things that we did is we developed a bonus system for our teachers that were in very critical areas of need, like autism, emotional impairment, and actually it's now spread across all Act 18. That was probably one of the most important and successful decisions I believe we made as a department, because one, I believe we were compensating people with the money that they truly earned, but it was also helping us retain and attract staff where the competition is extremely stiff. I'll give you a prime example. When I started in 2016, we have a very strong relationship with some of the universities where they would send us some of their interns. We were getting like 30 interns a semester. Sometimes we had to turn them away. When it was all said and done, right now they're giving us like 2 or 3 a semester. We're just not getting many people. So I think that was a critical area to where we worked very hard to ensure that we were getting the right people in and keeping people.
All right. Thank you so much for answering all these questions and bearing with us. So we would like to take a few minutes now to provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions you might have for the board.
I just have one question. I know you guys had a long night last night and probably a long week ahead of you. And whoever wants to answer, please feel free. What character traits are you looking for in the next superintendents?
Anyone? You said the next trait?
Character traits, yeah, characteristics.
Trait. For me, and I'll speak for myself, we need a strong leader that would come in and assess and is not afraid to make changes. Somebody who's transformational and would look at things from the perspective of our kids and how we would improve things for our kids. I do agree that we have to support the teachers, the principals, and so on, but we also have to have accountability across the district. So that's my perspective. Trustee Moussa?
I'd just like to add to that, as somebody who is visionary, who is looking 10 years down the line of where we want to move this district forward. Somebody who has the experience already and the motivation and the fire in them to take this district to the next level.
All right. Go ahead, Trustee.
Yeah,
Sir.
Mr. Esseily, you know, we live in Dearborn. It's the 3rd largest district in the state, something like 20,000 students. And we have a community that's very involved in everything that we do. So I think it's important that whatever leader we pick is someone who is obviously a very effective communicator to the community, and someone who has the type of personality that can motivate others, not just within the district, but throughout the whole city, or the whole district. We're more than one city. That kind of personality, I think, to me is very important for someone that we're going to hire. And then, you know, most importantly, someone who can, we have real issues to deal with, and someone who can identify these things without ever trying to, you know, if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. So we have to make sure that we are always identifying our problems clearly and have a leader who has the vision to tackle them and a real plan. There's a lot of things that worry me about our future, and I think right now this is one of, they always say every election is the most important election. This is probably the most important superintendent selection that we might be ever making in the history of Dearborn schools. We have a lot of things that we have to deal with in the next few years. So I think it's very critical for us. And those would be the kind of character traits I'd be looking for. And obviously, integrity in talking, again, that's about identifying problems, right? Having the integrity to identify that these are real problems that we have to deal with right now and getting on top of them.
Trustee Sub?
I'll also echo the accountability one. I think that's just big for everybody now, especially at a time where it's tough to have tough conversations, and you know everybody has opinions and feedback, and you know getting stretched in so many directions. So I think being able to hold people accountable in whatever way that looks like is really important. But touching on the size of the district in a different setting, though, for me it's a leader who can understand the impact of every decision throughout the entire district. So as being such a large district with so many different factors and moving pieces, how does each individual decision for each piece affect each other? And I think sometimes it's difficult to do that, being so large. So I would love someone, who can do that and then has the vision to understand of everything impacts each other. We don't make decisions in a silo. We don't do things just for individual people or goals. That everything you do is going to affect the entire district. So that's what I'm looking for.
All right. Trustee Bazey?
I think I agree with a lot of the comments that were said. I think a lot of them are outward facing. I think that our next leader also internally, a leader of leaders is the term I usually use, working with their executive team and empowering their executive team and leading them and somebody that can really implement, the vision that we have and the strategy that we have and the things that need to get done. And then working with the board, educating the board, being a person that can work with the 7 people that they need to work with, and understanding them and their needs and how to communicate with them to help everything continue to move forward.
All right.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I did prepare some final words for the board.
He
and
has
the
a lead
community.
for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, shoot.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah,
Not a good thing.
No, it's okay.
I like that. You're ahead of the game. So in closing, is there anything you would like to add?
There you go.
And did that really make a difference to you?
Well, you know what?
I had to.
I was thinking if I get them laughing before I leave, maybe that's a good side. No. First and foremost, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you guys for this opportunity. I understand how enormous of a decision you're making. As some of you said, it is going to impact generations. While I don't think anybody in this room envies you right now for having to make that decision, I can speak for myself and tell you I trust you, and you're going to make the right decision. I do. Okay.
Thank you.
With that said,
All right.
no, I still have more.
Done.
You still going?
You're not going to take this part away from me,
go ahead.
President Al-Shahmi.
He's got 27 minutes left. So.
I got 27. No, I'm not going to use all 27. Okay. All right. Dearborn Public Schools is who I am. It's where I grew up. It's where I was shaped. It's where I've always chosen to work. I came to a system with massive staffing shortages, a compliance-only mindset, unhappy parents, and problems with the Office of Civil Rights. We put together a team and a vision, and from there we developed and aligned systems to shift from a state-driven compliance-only model to one focused on compliance and outcomes. Most people don't know the complexities of the special education department. It is a district within a district. It influences every department and school. Over 600 staff members, an $80 million budget, amazing parents who teach you passion, empathy every day. Parents often register their children at our schools, often bringing us students who face challenges. We take in the child who doesn't read, with the parent told to believe that he never will. The student who doesn't talk, with the world's expectation that this will be the case forever. And the one who can't walk, with parents fearing this will be lifelong. Then our educators come in. They work with the student who couldn't read and soon he's reading and writing. The student who couldn't talk, eventually utters his first words to his mom. And the student who couldn't walk proudly crosses the finish line at a community run. Being the special education director is the proudest role I've ever held. I often feel humbled that I lead such an amazing staff that has made all this possible. I don't believe I can compare to their excellence. They consistently prove to me that nothing is impossible. I'm proud. For the last 3 years, we've received the highest rating from the Michigan Department of Education in compliance and outcomes. Districts are driving hours to experience our programs firsthand so they can duplicate them. A State Department using our vision to help and shape their own. 0 federal and state complaints this year, and graduation rates meeting expectations for the first time ever. Most importantly, parents who were once our biggest adversaries are now our biggest allies. There is no doubt in my mind I can lead this work at the superintendent level. If we want to build a culture of outcomes, raise literacy scores, and ensure that every high school student has the tools and confidence to be leaders in the world, then I am ready to lead. Thank you all so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Esseily. We appreciate your interest in the superintendent position for Dearborn Public Schools. The board is interviewing 6 candidates this week. We will let you know after our meeting on Saturday, April 18th, where we stand in our search process. Thank you for your participation in the first round.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to recess until, you want to come back a few minutes before 7:40, 7:35?
What time does the?
It's 7:20, right, 7:18.
What time does the? next one?
7:40 is the next scheduled
Next
interview,
one,
so
okay.
7:35? Huh?
Second candidate.
Oh,
Just make-
okay, 7:30. It's 7:20 now, so motion of recess until 7:30?
I'll support.
Do we have to go around the table?
No, no.
No?
Roll call.
I don't
All
know.
in favor?
Do we have to go around the table on this? Unanimous
just-
consent,
All
I
in
think.
favor?
Just do it, because,
Just ask for all in favor.
roll call.
No, no,
No, no, no, unanimous consent is
roll.
fine.
Unanimous?
Unanimous
Okay.
consent.
But yesterday,
Yeah? he
We're
called
good.
it?
All right. Yeah, please. Could I ask everyone to go back to their seat and ask the trustees to join us?
Do we have to?
That's a tough question.
Thank you, Joy. I actually, the conference room to look for the basket. And it's right here?
But I'm eating something crunchy.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I gotta.
By the way,
Who are we missing?
I loved it. You're like, yeah. Oh, that's good. Where's Ahmed? Where's our secretary?
We have to find it.
Trustees are.
David, can you look for Amr? Oh, okay.
I think he's in the bathroom.
I'm not looking there.
Mark it down.
There is some advantage to being the only female on the board.
We do listen to her. You know, she controls the board.
That's just because of my age.
Yes, please, yeah, go ahead.
Could you guys tell your friend to come?
Okay.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Trustee Moussa, for bringing trustees are.
Sorry.
So forgive me if I repeat for the audience. I'm repeating a scripted So I'll start off by saying good evening. On behalf of Dearborn Public School, I would like to welcome Moussa Hamka and to this interview for the position of superintendent. Mr. Hamka is Assistant Principal of Human Resource.
Assistant Superintendent. You said
Assistant
principal, it's superintendent, assistant superintendent.
Superintendent, sorry. Position of Mr. Hamka, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources for Grosse Pointe Public Schools. I will take a few minutes to briefly describe our format. The interview will take up to 90 minutes. Time will be kept on the monitor. I didn't see the monitor the last time. Oh, in front of you. Good, okay. There will be 22 questions for the board. Toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give you the opportunity to ask questions of the board and to make a closing statement. We will let you know if time is becoming an issue and there's a need to pick up the pace of the responses. For those present for the interview, we welcome and encourage your feedback rather than making public comments about our candidate. We ask that you use the QR code provided for this process. Take a look at David over there. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Education, as the elected representative of our community. We value and seriously consider the input of our stakeholders in the process. So, opening question. Mr. Hamka, while we had the opportunity to review your application materials, audience members have not. Please briefly review your background and share what caused you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
Good evening. Thank you, Board of Education, for the invitation to be here with you guys this evening. I appreciate everyone out in the audience for engaging in this important process. This is a meaningful decision for our district and for our community. And the engagement we see reflects the value we place in our schools. To know me, to know my why is first to know my family. My wife, Shadia Noor, who is at the early college. Early college. I have Huda also at the early college. I have Layla, who's at Howard. I have Batul, who's at Wayne State. And I have Ali right there. Oh, there's Batul. Hi, Batul. And Ali. So, they're my driving force. They're what keeps me grounded. They remind me every day why this work is important. What I want for them, what I want for our students, and what I want for our staff is to feel safe, to feel loved and cared for, to be challenged and supported, and to be inspired. So that's kind of my why. I'd also like to thank my superintendent, my deputy superintendent, people from Grosse Pointe in the back. It's really nice to see them. But getting into my why, I firmly believe the greatest institution that we have in America is our public education system. It has the power not only to transform lives, but to alter the trajectory of a family tree and entire lineages for generations to come. I believe that deeply. Like many of us in this room, I am the son of an immigrant, and I've seen firsthand the power of education to create opportunity, dignity, stability, upward mobility for all of our families in our community. This is one of the reasons I'm so strongly drawn to the superintendency here in Dearborn. In a city like Dearborn, our schools do more than educate kids. They help welcome our newcomers. They open up doors and possibilities into Ivy League schools. They anchor our neighborhoods. They strengthen our families, and they support our long-term residents, all while shaping the future of our community itself. So that responsibility means a great deal to me. I'm a lifelong Dearborn resident. I proudly say I love Dearborn everywhere I go. I was born here, I was raised here, and I'm raising my family here. I was a product of one of Dearborn's early innovative high schools. I was at the Academy of Engineering and Technology at Fortson, which I think has since morphed to DCMST. But that played an integral role in my love for math and science. I'm a math geek. I geek out over numbers. I later attended Henry Ford Community College, which this board oversees. I achieved my goal of graduating debt-free. Subsequently, I went to Wayne State, and I earned my master's, my undergraduate and my master's. I've also successfully completed the MLI Superintendent's Leadership Academy. I've earned my Certified Human Resource Specialist endorsement from Michigan State. And next spring, I'll have my CFO endorsement from the Michigan School Business Organization, MSBO. So I have a good sense of the financials and inner workings. But as a parent of 5 children whose educational experience spanned elementary, early college, and university, and soon to be preschool next year, maybe GSRP, I continue to experience Dearborn Public Schools from multiple vantage points. And that gives me an immense sense of pride, but it also gives me an immense sense of responsibility to step up at this time to help lead our future. Professionally, I bring more than 2 decades of experience across several highly respected districts in our region. I started off as a mathematics teacher at West Bloomfield High School. I was an assistant principal at Canton at PSEP, 6,600 kids. It was like a sea of ants during passing time. I later went to North Farmington High School, where I was assistant principal before I ended up in Grosse Pointe. I spent over a decade as a principal at Grosse Pointe South, and this is my 2nd year as assistant superintendent. In my current role, I oversee complex systems, I support labor relations, I guide investigations, and a lot of compliance work, and I work closely with our superintendent and our board. I feel that strengthened my capacity in governance, organizational leadership, and stewardship of people and of our process. At the same time, my decade-long tenure as principal at one of the state's most premier high schools afforded me the opportunity to lead the core work of our schools, teaching and learning, enhancing a culture of excellence for our students and our staff, establishing systems of support to ensure that they're living into their dreams, and cultivating family engagement. I've also been an adjunct professor at Henry Ford College, Community College. I always call it HFCC, I forget, of mathematics. I've taught everything from developmental math to calculus. And that experience has allowed me to remain closely connected to that post-secondary expectation and that transition from high school to college and career. It's also allowed me to remain a teacher at heart when I'm interacting with our staff. I can relate to them very well. But what excites me most about this opportunity is that Dearborn's already a strong district. It has a proud history, a deep commitment to students, and it has a legacy of excellence and access. And I see this as an opportunity to build on that foundation and help position the district for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, based on what you know about our district, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term priorities we must address? And how do your background and skills position you to lead that work?
We have a lot of priorities in Dearborn. Narrowing it down to 3, if I had to choose, first and foremost would be our infrastructure bond. Second would be increased academic achievement. And the third would be improving the culture of our schools. So first, if we look at the bond, we have a historic opportunity here. We look at where our millage rates are and how they've fallen off over the years. And we look at where our hold harmless, about 30 years ago, we were raising nearly $2,900 a student. That's dropped off to 200-ish, right? There's an opportunity that once that levy on the hold harmless expires to do something really transformational with our schools. So we have that opportunity there. We have the last bond that failed. I hope there's another question subsequent to this that'll let me get into some of my bond experience. But I think we have our work cut out for us in terms of connecting with the community and really looking at what we could do differently and learning from the mistakes that happened in 2019. Academic achievement, that's the heart and soul of what I've done. One of the proudest things at Grosse Pointe South is the excellence that we have cultivated, not just with our students, but also with our staff, their dedication to our kids, the way they love and inspire them, the way they bring joy to the classroom is truly something remarkable. And I think that feeds into our students. When they're inspired, when the teachers are in front of them, it really tremendously makes a difference. We put systems in place, MTSS, PBIS, all the things that we have here in Dearborn. But one of the things I did really well is I monitored that feedback. As a mathematician, I have an affinity for spreadsheets and numbers, and I think that helped me guide my reflection to make sure that we're making decisions that aren't grounded on opinions or feelings, but are really rooted in a way that's not subjective in the data to help us truly reflect, refine, and adjust what we're doing. The last piece is the culture piece. The survey that was put out to the community about the bond, and it was about the perceptions. There was one line, it just struck a nerve in my heart. The perception that our schools are unruly. That's not acceptable. We are better than that. Our community is better than that. Our schools are better than that. And I think our parents expect more. I think we really have to lean into this. We've done a lot of work. We have great goals. We look at the affective work. We look at the building blocks that the board has put in place. I think we have a solid foundation. If I were to come in as superintendent, my job would be to refine that, to tweak that, to ensure that we're calibrating, and more importantly, we're communicating very explicitly and with clarity to all our stakeholders.
All right. Next question. Tell us about a time when you led through a crisis or significant change. What decision did you make? What was the outcome? And what did you learn that you would apply here?
You only want one? Early on in my tenure at Grosse Pointe South High School, we experienced a series of intolerant behaviors that emerged, particularly at our African American students. And they weren't subtle. They were on social media, they made national news. And so we partnered with the NAACP, we partnered with our local houses of worship, we developed a plan, we worked with U of M, and we really tackled the work of making our schools a more inclusive space. And that work wasn't hard. That work wasn't easy. It was really hard. What I learned from that is I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was. I look back, I don't know how I got through it. I was personally attacked, right? And that wasn't easy. You could probably look up, there was an issue at Fire the Muslim Principal at one point, right after the 2016 election. There were some community members who were a loud minority who did not want to see the changes happening in our school. And my job as a leader was to remain steadfast, to lean into those difficult conversations, to welcome people in to have those courageous conversations, but to remain unwavering. And I think what the lasting impact on me is, as leaders, when we go through those difficult times, can we see an initiative through? That's the biggest thing I learned. I could give you more details about what we did, but we'd be here all night.
Okay, Mr. Hamka, welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to have you here. You're going to have 4 questions with me that are all about district relations.
4.
Yeah,
Wow.
sorry.
Okay.
That are all about district relations. The first one is, please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community. Specifically, share an example of how you built a productive relationship with a resistant stakeholder group.
I guess I'm going to continue with the last question. I think it's important when we have a problem that we invite people in. We listen to their stories. We listen to how they're experiencing that difficult time that we're going through so we could really understand how it's impacting them. As a recovering math teacher, I would always tell my calculus students, we spend too much time trying to solve the problem and not enough time trying to understand it. Oftentimes in calculus, you really need to just read the problem over and over again. And I think that's what we need to do in these difficult situations. We need to foster that open door policy, to hear from our stakeholders, and then invite them in to build a plan. And I think the main job of a leader is to build that vision. What's the ideal state that we want to arrive at? And then from there, I like to employ the backwards design. We know where our end is going to be. Let's put those stepping stones and work backwards. Let's build the structures and let's build the systems in order to support that. And let's put timelines and make sure we're holding people accountable so we could get to our vision. So with the issue that happened in Grosse Pointe, one specific example, we were partnering with the Michigan Roundtable for Diversity and Inclusion. They had a wonderful series on redlining and the impacts of housing discrimination across Metro Detroit. We were fresh off the heels of our racial incidents And we wanted to foster a deeper sense of empathy and understanding. Because in Grosse Pointe, there were deeds that would say no N-word or Jews allowed. There was a point system. If your last name ended with a consonant versus a vowel, if you had an accent, right? So what we started to dig into is how that shaped the current community that we live in, to understand the history and the legacy that the lack of access played in our current future. So we wanted to bring the Michigan Roundtable to diversity and inclusion, and there was tremendous pushback. And so one of the things I did is I partnered with our other high school, Grosse Pointe North, but I also partnered with our private school, Liggett, which is something we typically don't do. They're our competitors. We came together, we collaborated, we got our teachers together. We made this an educational opportunity. This traveling exhibit went to all 3 of our high schools. It also was displayed at the War Memorial in Grosse Pointe. So what we did is we built a collective vision and support. That way when the arrows came, we were able to remain steadfast.
Okay, my next question is, give an example of community leadership you provided outside of day-to-day district duties. How did it benefit community support for the district?
That's a great question.
Thank you, I wrote it myself.
You wish.
One of the things I'm most proud of in Grosse Pointe is that our students have a collective sense of empathy. Not all our kids, I'd say most of our kids. And I think one of the ways that we achieve that is through community service. I think when we give back to others, service to others, it softens the heart. It really builds empathy. It really builds understanding. So what we've done in Grosse Pointe, we have a model. Our students are out in the community. So for instance, we have a group right now. They just did spring cleanup for all our senior citizens. We had a group, they shoveled the sidewalks during the winter. We've done mulch, all these types of community events. We have gone to the soup kitchen and served and volunteered. All those things I've participated in outside of the day. And I think that helps bridge this, at times, disconnect with some of our segments of our population. We connect with our elders in the community. They see the value in our schools, and they're more likely to vote yes on the next bond. I got the comedian to laugh, so.
Yeah. My next question is, how do we create a district-wide culture of continuous improvement, aligning our actions to achieve strategic outcomes?
Every successful organization, every successful person that I know, one of the greatest qualities that they possess is the quality of reflection. And so I think we need to inspire a culture of curiosity, a culture of reflection that will enable us to continually look at the work that we're doing in a judgment-free way. And one of the things that inhibits continuous improvement is we're scared to look at the data. When you look at Dearborn, and I won't get into your MyKIP plan and your school improvement plan and your strategic plan, which are absolutely incredible. Best of brand. Our district dashboard for accountability is amazing. I was telling my deputy superintendent the other day, I'm like, we got to build this in Grosse Pointe, right? We have a lot going on for us. But I think when we open the hood and look at it, and we ask ourselves, are we truly looking at the data? Are our PLCs engaging in those difficult conversations? I'm not sure. That's a wondering. And I think we really need to engage with the staff to see where they're at on that continuum. Because if they're not willing to engage in that, I think that really tells us a little bit about our culture. Culture, when it's positive, when we have strong relationships, they're grounded in trust. So our staff might say, we have great relationships. But if in the PLCs, they're not having those difficult conversations, they're not grappling with how they're presenting information to our students and not thoughtfully reflecting on the data, I think that's a big indicator that we have a lot of relationship building and culture work to do.
Okay, my last question for you is, how have you obtained and utilized stakeholder feedback to modify district priorities? Provide a recent example and the impact it provided.
This is a great question. Stakeholder impact. Say
Wanna
that
read
one
it
more
again?
time. Yeah, please. That was a good one.
I didn't write this one. How have you obtained and utilized stakeholder feedback to modify district priorities? Provide a recent example and the impact it provided.
Yeah. How do we define feedback? I think oftentimes we think it's a survey. Oftentimes we think, right, it's something formal. So I'll give you an example of feedback we got from, and by the way, everything our students do and everything our teachers do is a form of feedback. We currently have a building in our district that we're struggling with. We're struggling with the culture amongst our kids, struggling with the culture amongst our staff, and I think in the last 6 years, we've had 5 principals. And so we've put some systems of support in place, and the feedback we're getting from the students through their behavior, the feedback we're getting from the teachers, great teachers who at times are demoralized, right? We hear that from them. We hear from the parents because they're frustrated. They want a better environment for their students. By the way, I think it's a great school, but that's the feedback that you hear. So you really have to look hard at what we're doing. And so what we're doing right now is we're redesigning their system of supports for next year. We often talk about what accountability looks like. I think, Adel, one time I was watching a board meeting and you looked and you said, what does accountability look like? And I'll tell you, sometimes it's the loss of autonomy. So now you have to go to the building and say, hey, we let you design a system to support, but we're not getting the intended outcome. So now we're going to work with you, shoulder to shoulder. We're going to be a little more prescriptive in what we do. And then we've also had to take a look at how we're funding things differently. So now we're in, staffing season. So we're also examining, does this building need more support? But we're also looking hard even at ourselves as leaders. My deputy superintendent and I, Roy, he's sitting back there, we had a long, hard discussion about, are the supports that we have in place actually making a difference? Or do they just make us feel better? Sometimes with our struggling schools, we offer them supports, but we never look at any metrics to see if we're getting the results that we want. So right now, as we're going through our budgeting process, we're re-envisioning the possibilities for this school. That was a great question, Ahmed.
I didn't write any of them. I must admit now.
Mr. Hamka, welcome. You get 3 questions from me on political awareness. So number 8, as our superintendent, how would you advocate for political action that benefits our district and public education throughout the state?
Through relationships. We have to cultivate relationships with people at the state level. I think we're very fortunate here in Dearborn. We have a direct connection to to the superintendent of schools. I know Alabas Faraj really well. I've spoken to Senator Hertel in Grosse Pointe. When Abdullah Hamoud, our current mayor, was up in Lansing, I would always be calling him. I just had a conversation the other day with Alabas, actually, about state funding. The governor has a proposed line item where she's taking away 31A funds and putting it into a new account called 164N or M. And it's really interesting, the possibilities of what we might be able to do with that money and the restrictions that may or may not occur might present some really unique opportunities for Dearborn. But I was calling him because I wanted to advocate that that's a change that we need to see. I thought that was an equity-based move that would help our more at-risk students, not only here in Dearborn, but across our metro area and across the state. So I think we have to cultivate. I think we need to share our voice. We have a very unique community. And we have to make sure that when we're speaking, we're advocating for everyone.
Number 9, superintendents are often faced with making decisions when there is no clear right answer and the community is divided. Please describe a time when you faced such a decision, including how you approached the decision-making process and how you worked to build understanding and support for the direction you chose.
Wow. So this one is not a decision that I owned, but it was a decision we made as a district. I would say that my deputy superintendent, maybe 10 years ago, really got a lot of input from us. It was one of those us decisions. And it really revolved around our transfer policy within the district. We had a policy that allowed people to transfer to another building if there were open seats. But then when we really examined what was happening, we were creating inequities. We had families who were leaving our most at-risk school. And if you think of who can leave, it's the parents with transportation. It's the parents who, maybe are not working or have a flexible job, maybe stay-at-home parent. And so we found that the students with a single mother, single father, a parent working 2 jobs, people who were marginalized in our society, couldn't move to those other schools. And so then you have to look at what the impact that had. So now you look at that school, you're siphoning off students. That changes the culture of the remaining students who remain there. But what it also does is it takes away some of the parents who have means and ability, which means your donations, which means some of those culture activities that our parents supplement started to change. But then here's where I think it hit us in the face. We went through a reconfiguration process, and we were deciding which schools we wanted to close. So we are looking at the schools and looking at their numbers. We made some decisions. But when you dig deeper, you realize we closed the wrong schools. Because if students were back at their home school, we would have closed different schools. And I think what that did right now is it destroyed a segment of our community. A school lost, part of our community lost an elementary school, and it has forever changed Grosse Pointe.
What impact do standardized testing requirements have on teaching and learning in our state?
We got an hour left. Okay. Standardized testing, it's the double-edged sword. I think as leaders, as we sit here at this table, as the superintendent, the scores help us because that's how we're measuring our growth. That's how we're measuring our accountability. And we need that. We want to know if our efforts are effective. We have a limited amount of resources. Are we deploying them efficiently? So we need the tests. But when we look at what it's doing to our students and how it's driving some of our curriculum, I think we have to maintain a balanced and nuanced approach. If you just look at what's happening, we moved the SAT online. A lot of students weren't used to interacting with a test online. So now, to make them more comfortable, what are we doing? More technology in the classroom. Well, more technology in the classroom leads to more social isolation. Social isolation means we're not feeling connected to our peers. When we're not feeling connected to our peers, our culture can deteriorate, right? And so I think we really have to be careful how much emphasis we place on it. I think there's some great data out there. I think there's some good exams. I think we really have to manage that balance And I will tell you, I'm the first person to say, and I'll own this, I pushed so hard for more testing in Grosse Pointe. I made sure that our students took the PSAT every fall and every spring. So when you went through Grosse Pointe High School, if you wanted to, you could be tested 8 times. Now, what did that do? It opens up doors of opportunity. When you do really well on that exam, you're looked at differently on a college application. And so I think we wrestle with that. And so as a parent, I think where I'm started to land is more choice for our families, providing them opportunities to lean in or lean out, so they can have more control over their students. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. You know what we really should do? Ask our students.
Mr. Hamka, welcome. I am, too, a graduate of the Academy of Engineering and Technology.
Really?
Last class.
Mr. Whitaker, you remember Mr. Whitaker?
Yes, of course. He was a dear teacher of ours and who ventured now into the private world.
Yeah.
So my questions revolve around leadership attributes. And the first question is, please describe your typical leadership style and share how it is effective for those that you serve.
My typical leadership style. I'd describe myself as a chameleon. That's not really a leadership style. I was trying to be funny on it. Not too funny. I'd say I'm a situational leader. And so as a situational leader, I adjust my practice to the situation at hand, right? And so I think my strongest inclination is to be a collaborative leader, especially when we're doing like long-term visioning work, or we're working through a process that is detailed and that a runway for implementation is a little further out. I think you want to invite people, you want to invite stakeholders, you want to bring voice and agency into that process. Then there's other times where, as a leader, you have to be make that tough choice. Sometimes in a crisis, right? That's a decision that I'm going to own. That's not a time to collaborate with others, and you need to be really decisive. If you're dealing with tragedy, God forbid a student or a staff member, tragedy in the community, I think we have to be an empathetic leader, to lean in, to listen, and to connect with our hearts. And then at other times, since I'm HR and I do a lot of compliance, if I'm in a Title IX investigation, I am very matter of fact. I'm very prescriptive, and that's to protect our organization. My job is to mitigate risk. And so I guess my style is very situational. Was there a second part to that question?
Just share how it is effective for those that you serve, but I think you have answered the question. So the second question is, what is the most difficult decision that you've made in your educational career? Describe your decision-making process. I can repeat the question. Okay.
No.
All right.
I think that the most difficult, I would say it wasn't a decision, it was
Decision, most difficult decision.
most difficult one.
Yeah,
I'm going to pluralize it.
sure.
When I arrived at South, there was a culture that was unhealthy amongst our students, right? So I just spoke to you guys about the racial incidents we had. But we also had a problem with alcohol. We also had a problem with drugs. And we had a mental health issue that really many in the community did not want to speak about openly. I remember I went to my first homecoming dance at Grosse Pointe South. I'm like, all right, let's go. And I see kids passing out, throwing up. We called the police. I believe that night we had 15 or 16 arrests. We found kids passed out in cars. I'm 2 months in on the job, and I realized we have a problem. But the parents were very dismissive. There was actually a tradition in Grosse Pointe that your date, the female, would buy a flask, engrave your name on it, and give it to you as a gift. And so we had to tackle that. And so that, coupled with the pieces, with the race piece, all came at once. And they all came on the heels of 2016 election. And so now you just feel like, man, I can't win. I can't breathe. It just keeps coming. But I knew I had to do something. And so here's what I did. We consulted with our law firm. The dance is not a part of a FAPE, free and public education, right? It's a privilege. So we started breathalyzing students as they came in. We cleaned up the dance really quickly. And that was something I was very proud of. But we got backlash because some of the parents told me, Mr. Hamka, attendance at the dance is down 30%. And I would look at them with conviction. I say, you know, I'd rather it be down 30%, and I can ensure that our students are safe and they're making responsible choices. And when they leave tonight, they have a better opportunity of getting home safely. Then I got the attack of he's imposing Sharia law because I'm Muslim and I don't drink. And so therefore you're trying to impose this on our kids, right? So, you know, I smiled, I laughed, and I kind of redirected that and said, you know, I am Muslim, true. I don't drink, also true, but it's Michigan law. Until your child is, 21, they can't drink. But I think there was many of those examples where we had to do the right thing. You have to have a strong moral compass, and you have to be able to lead with conviction. And we lost a lot of donations from some parents due to that as well. So stand tall, hold firm, keep moving forward.
My last question for you, Mr. Hamka, is how do you inspire and engage the entire school community in support of the district's vision and mission?
When I think of a superintendent, they are our chief storyteller. They paint a picture of what the future could be. So if we're talking about a bond, what are the possibilities if we go forward with this bond? What opportunities will we now have for our students? What will that future look like? If we're engaging in activities in professional learning and we're leaning into Anita Archer's work around explicit instruction, what's that outcome that we want? Can we paint a picture for our constituents, for our parents, and for our staff that is so compelling that they join in? I think that at its heart, that's very hard to do. But I think that is at the core part of that job. Can you repeat that?
How do you inspire and engage the entire school community in support of the district's vision and mission?
And so I think part of inspiring and engaging them is ensuring that they had a voice in that process, meeting with them, getting their input, all stakeholders. I think that's a critical component of that.
Trustee D'Ambrosio?
What question am I on, just so I can time how many?
Number 14.
14, we got 7 more? 6 more?
8 more.
8 more.
Okay, I'm not good at math.
Calculus.
9 more.
9 more? 22 questions.
3 and 3, right?
Go ahead, Pat.
Mr. Hamka, I'm going to ask you about instruction and curriculum tonight. Describe one program or strategy you led that narrowed the achievement gap for economically and disadvantaged and historically underperforming students.
I can think of a few examples that we've done. Trying to think of the best one to bring forward right now. We re-envisioned our math curriculum. We had several tracks. Everyone knows most schools have an honors track. We have what we called a college prep track, but then we had another track, and it was called the essentials track. So a student could enter ninth grade, and what they could do is take Algebra 1 Essentials. And what that was is a class where the pace was a little bit slower. Well, what did that mean? That means that you're going to actually cover less curriculum. So you go from Algebra 1 Essentials to Geometry Essentials to Algebra 2 Essentials. And so as you go through the curriculum, you're compounding an effect, because our slowest learners need to be accelerated, not slowed down. And so we faced the challenge. So we dug into the data, started working with my department chair, and we started re-envisioning what can we do differently. And we also looked historically. When this class first started, the scope of the intended target audience was very small. But over time, the gatekeeper of that class, right, they retire, and then every time a student would struggle, maybe instead of getting an A, they were getting a B. They wanted to protect their GPA. They thought that that would be better than rigor for them. They'd go into that class. When a student with special needs who was struggling, and maybe we weren't supporting in the right way through our Tier 1 interventions, the easy answer was put them in the essentials class. And then what ended up happening is that class became majority special ed students and our African American students. Over a course of 10 years, I did an analysis. Not one single student ever became proficient on the PSAT. I remember I went to my department chair. I said, this is educational malpractice. We have to do something differently. And so she's really a phenomenal human being. And we developed a path forward where we eliminated the essentials class. We put those students in the essentials course back in on grade level. But then what we did is we opened up an accompanying support class. So now almost like a double block of math, you'd go in, you'd receive your instruction, and then you'd have a support class at another hour in a small setting. And so we're seeing good results. I think we're in our third year of this pilot, and we're hoping for better days ahead.
Reading at grade level by third grade is a critical milestone for future academic success. What strategies will you support to ensure all students achieve grade level literacy by the end of the third grade?
But when we look at the literacy law and we look at the dyslexia law, I think one of those critical components is implicit instruction, explicit instruction, which is something that we're implementing in our district, right? But beyond that, I think I would take us to Mississippi. If we are looking for true turnaround in what happened with reading, if you look at Mississippi about a decade ago, I think they were ranked 47th, 48th in the country. And I think right now they're third. They've made tremendous gains. And so when you look at what they've done, they built a tremendous system. A couple of things that they did. They focused on training our teachers through evidence-based reading. The program they used is Letters. That's something we currently support in Grosse Pointe. I know a lot of teachers, even in Dearborn, are getting the Letters training. They implemented that with fidelity. The second thing they did in Mississippi, they started coaching. They put instructional coaches into our early childhood K through 3. But the unique thing that they did, the coaching wasn't optional. You could not opt into it. And so oftentimes in education, the folks who need it are not the ones raising their hand and signing up for it. And so they made it mandatory for everyone. They also had an incredible accountability system, Pat. The building principals had look-fors. They had to do look-fors, and they had to post the accountability plan online every month and update that to their community. So if we were to look at that model, right, I think we could take some elements of that, enhance that. We would probably need to modify what they did, I think, with our ELL learners, right, our language learners. The importance of phonics and vocabulary is a little more important for us, so we'd need to tweak what they do. But I think there's a great model in Mississippi into what was done.
My final question, what are the most urgent challenges for special education in our region, and how should these challenges be addressed?
I think the Department of Education dismantling is having a downriver effect. We know the funding from the federal government is changing, but now we look at what's happening here at the local level, at the state. I think the push for LRE, the least restrictive environment, is going to reshape what we do in our classrooms. And so we need to rethink and reimagine what supports for our special ed students look like, alternatives to suspensions. I think what we're seeing right now is a tremendous amount of discipline issues from students who are special ed. And we have to balance the accountability with keeping them in school, with going through with their manifestation determination reviews to see if this was a part of their disability or not. But I think there's some structures that we could build really to address this. So at one of our schools right now, what we do is we have, every hour we have an academic learning center. It's staffed by our teachers. So 1 hour is a math teacher, then a science teacher, an English teacher, all of the course. So instead of sending a student home, what we could do is place them in the academic learning center. And they can still move forward on the curriculum. They can still receive instruction from a teacher. If they're a special education student, their caseload manager can come down to the room and provide service. And that way we're not suspending them and sending them home. I think we have to look for more creative ways to establish a school within a school model. When students don't do school well, the answer is not time off of school. It's more school done right. And so I think we have to really re-envision that, then add some supports. So what I would do is in the academic learning center, I'd add in a behavior specialist. Maybe we take a look at some of our deans that we have across our schools, especially at our high schools. When we look at what's happening, especially with some of our larger students, there's some concerns about safety when it comes to their behaviors.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Hamka.
Good evening.
I'm going to ask questions on your favorite topic, I suspect, finances.
Oh, let's go.
Okay. Please describe your experience developing and managing budgets, including the largest budget you have overseen and the strategies you use to maintain a balanced budget.
Can you repeat that?
Please describe your experience developing and managing budgets, including the largest budget you've overseen, and the strategies you use to maintain a balanced budget.
Budgeting is essential work for us. It's one of the 3 critical items that the board has to do, and it's one of the critical attributes that the superintendent is going to get evaluated on. And so in doing this work, collaboration with the CFO is going to be critical to ensure that our budgets are balanced. This work is never done in isolation. This work is done as a team. And this work needs to be cross-referenced. It needs to be checked. We need to confirm and we need to validate. So I would probably tell you I've never done any of that alone. I would never assume that risk. It's too big for me. But what I could tell you we're doing right now in Grosse Pointe, we're all faced with the same issue. Declining enrollment, limited funds, and increased needs in the building. And so we're trying to reimagine what we're doing. And so right now I'm in charge of, as HR, oversee staffing for our whole district. We are about a $110 million district, and we know that staffing accounts for about 80% of it. So we can do the numbers on that. I don't oversee all of that, but a big chunk. So what we're doing is a zero-based budgeting approach. I have been meeting with our secondary administrators, and we're trying to look at how we staff our buildings. We have a lot of positions, right? And I think Dearborn is no different. How many coaches do we have? How many interventionists do we have, right? And so we have to take a look at everything that we're doing and analyze. Is it meeting our needs? And at times in education, we have a deficit mindset. We say we don't have enough money. So in Grosse Pointe, I tell them, we have enough money. We have a $110 million budget. In Dearborn, over $400 million when you factor in all the grants. That's a big budget. We have money. And so if we follow the money and we look at where we're putting our money, that's where our priorities are. So what we're trying to do is do that backwards. So we started our staffing, zero-based budget approach. We told all the principals, we're going to staff back to zero. What is the minimum, absolute minimum staffing needed to meet the requirements for our students to graduate? That was scenario one. Then we moved on to scenario two. We're going to add back essential supports for our most vulnerable students. What would that look like? Scenario three, add in opportunities for students. Lower some class size in selective areas, right? And build in more supports. And then version 4 is everything that we need. But here's what we did in version 1. When we said build the base, we made a list of everything that we don't have in that proposed budget. And then we rank ordered by priority all of the things that were off. So when we went to scenario 2, what did we add? We went back to our priorities in our list. And so now when we're looking forward to the budget for next year, I think that gives us a better sense of where we can land. And we've done a lot of the legwork. I think sometimes when we look at budgets, we look at it as how much do we need to cut rather than how much do we have to spend. And I think that's also a shift for our building principals. Because if you go to them and you say, hey, I need you to cut 5 teachers, we're taking something away rather than building something back based on need.
Okay. How would you ensure that our district's spending is aligned with our priorities?
I think I'd take a very similar approach as I just outlined. I'd look at a zero-based budgeting approach. And I think one of the things we have to do is look at the success metrics for all of the things that we put in place. So if it's not working, why not? How can we adjust? How can we move forward? And should we be deploying resources to another area that could potentially bring us better results than what we're currently experiencing? I would probably be meeting with my CFO all the time.
Well, somebody better.
I think that's the most important relationship. I mean, with the board, but as a superintendent, with your CFO, I know enough to be dangerous, though. That's about.
What is your experience with millage renewals, bond campaigns? You wanted this question, and sinking fund proposals. Share one campaign you led or supported and the factors that determined its success or failure.
So in Grosse Pointe, in the last 6 years, we've had 3 bonds. And we've learned a lot from those bonds. I'll start first in 2018 chronologically. We formed a Blue Ribbon Committee. We met with stakeholders. We engaged with Plant Moran. We did a needs assessment. And I remember it was somewhere in the order of $250 million. That was for our critical needs. We reduced that down to 180. And then when we talked to the community, we realized that only 120 million was palatable to them. So we went forward with a bond, certainly lower than we wanted, but we knew if we went for a higher amount, it was going to get voted down. So we had to take what we could get. And so we did a bond. It was all about being safe, dry, and connected because we had a lot of leaking roofs at the time. And so what we had to do is really talk to the community because we had failed a bond in 2012. We had a technology bond, and that had failed. So we had to reach out to our stakeholders, realize why did that bond fail, learn from those lessons, and then move forward. That bond successfully passed. I presented multiple times to parent groups out in the community, engaged with that process. We went for a sinking fund 2 years ago, and that we raised it to the maximum. We went from 1 mil to 3 mils, and that would approximately raise $11 million a year for us over the next 10 years. And so that allows us to do a lot of those capital projects that are smaller, that are more shovel-ready. We also developed a roadmap transparently. So we told the parents, in each of the years, here's what we estimate we would do with with the money we're receiving and the projects. And I think that was very successful. And then this last fall, we passed a $120 million bond. So we did, the way we brought community voice, our superintendent, really, she did a phenomenal job back there. We split the bond. So 120 million is what we were going for. We took 60 million, we identified it as critical. The other 60 million, we invited a community group. We formed a committee, and they helped us decide how to spend that $60 million. So we went through many ideas, many iterations, and at the end, we had consensus on our top priorities for the $60 million. And I think that was a critical part of having the bond pass, was the voices from various sects of the community who bought into the process. Another unique thing that they did, we gave every building $50,000 to spend how they want to the building principal. You know, every principal has that one idea. They're always, I wish I could do X, Y, Z, you know, that carpet that never makes it on the list. And so, again, that brought a lot of agency and a lot of ownership. And so I've been involved primarily in helping sell it to the community, in presenting and helping people understand the impact on their taxes. But what I will tell you is we had one critical mistake, and it does have a nexus to Dearborn. 2018, we passed a bond. 2019, we reconfigure and close 2 schools. 2 of the schools we closed were set to receive monies. Those voters are really upset with us. To this day, they come to our board meetings wearing their shirts, advocating for their school to be reopened. They constantly tell us, we voted, right? We approved the mills for our school, right? And so that was a difficult part. I think we probably should have reconfigured before we did the bond in order to have greater trust with the community. Another thing that we did in Grosse Pointe, I remember in 2018, our superintendent, we did what we call a heat map, and I actually did this. I used ChatGPT actually, and I did a heat map, and it shows us all the precincts and the failure or pass rate, and it's color-coded red or yellow, and we can see some of the precincts, and some things really stand out. I don't know if have you guys ever looked at this on a map? It's very telling, and I have a packet I'll provide you. It's really telling geographically where the pockets of failure are on here and where the pockets of success are. Overlap that with data about home values, it paints another picture. And interestingly enough, if you look at where our Arab populations live versus our white population, it also paints a picture. It paints a picture that might actually be a little different than what we got in the survey from the company that talked about community perceptions of our school. When we look at who actually voted the yes. But what we see is in Dearborn Heights, not a single precinct passed. When we look at Dearborn Heights precinct, the second precinct, 68% was no, right? And so it's really interesting. And when you look at the 7 top precincts, they alone accounted for 450 no votes. I forgot how much we lost by. I forgot what that margin was, but it was about that number. And we know mathematically, we don't need 470 to win. We need half plus 1, right? And so I think when we look at this heat map, I think we can gain insights as to where we need to target and then where the support that we have is. That's something that we did in Grosse Pointe. You got me excited, Mary. See, I talk about numbers and
I didn't write the
bond.
questions either.
Good evening, Mr. Hamka.
Good evening.
Shifting gears a bit to staff and personnel questions. We are on question number 20.
Okay.
How do you work with building and district administrators to establish a high-performing team while balancing support, autonomy, and accountability? Provide us with an example of when you built such a team, including the specific steps you took to ensure its success.
That was a multifaceted
It was. I will repeat the
question.
first part for you.
Thank you.
How do you work with building and district administrators to establish a high-performing team, balancing support, autonomy, and accountability?
I think that's through clarity. I think one of the things I do really well is I speak very clearly. I set goals that are very clear. So I'll just give you an example of what we did right now with our budgeting process. I made sure that when we communicated very clearly about what our desired outcomes were, but every single step of the way, there was a metric, there was a deliverable. And then what I would do, for instance, if there was a report due on Wednesday, I'd call up the administrator on Monday. And I'd say, hey, how are you doing on that report? Do you need any help? I think sometimes we wait till the meeting and then the person struggled. And so one of the things I've been trying to do a much better job at right now is proactively reaching out to people. And I think that builds trust, right? But when we talk about trust, I think that was the core of your question. That comes from relationships. And if we look at the foundation of a relationship, and if we really want it to be truly meaningful, I think there's two things that have to happen. We have to be consistent in our actions. And we need to follow up and follow through. We need to do what we say we're going to do. And I think the staff in Grosse Pointe would all tell you that I follow up, I follow through, and they can trust me.
How would you assess the culture and climate of our district, and what steps would you take as superintendent to positively influence and strengthen it? Bless you.
Bless you. I think there's multiple ways that we can receive data. Certainly we have quantitative data, right? We put out the surveys, we look at the metrics, but I think there's also the qualitative data. If I really want to know about the culture, we need to sit down and talk to people. It's hard to judge tone and text, but when I sit across from you, even when you say it in a way that is politically correct or somewhat muted, if I'm attentive, I'll read your emotions. So when I'm talking to a teacher and she's describing what's happening in her classroom, you can tell. And by noticing those cues, I think you can get them to open up. You can probe further, you could follow up and have one-on-one conversations. I'd want to hear from the kids. Right now, I was just at Howard Elementary, and my daughter had culture night. It was such a wonderful opportunity. The sense of community in that building is truly something special. But one of the things that I noticed is the joy. Not only were the kids joyful, but the staff. They were genuinely happy to be there. And I just kept thinking in my head, you can't buy that. You can't give someone a stipend to show up and be fully present and work with a bunch of, third and fourth graders at 6 o'clock in the evening, right? In a hot school, because there's no air conditioning, and today was a steamer out of nowhere. It was, so I think I'd want to talk to them, but I'd also want to get into the schools, right? I think we got to spend more time in the schools, learning and observing and watching what's happening and being present, getting into those classrooms. That would be my goal as superintendent.
How have you handled conflicts with labor relations or collective bargaining? Provide one example citing your role and the outcome.
In HR, I've never had to worry about that. I'm very fortunate. The two union co-presidents for the teachers union I've known for 12 years. They were teachers in my building at the time when they were presidents. I've had the pleasure in my 10 years of being principal at Grosse Pointe South. 9 of those years where the sitting president of the union was always in my building. So they gave me a quick life lesson on how to follow the contract. But I learned a lot. I think one of the ways I handle conflict is through open and honest conversations. I think both sides, if I'm thinking of the teachers right now, we speak candidly, we speak openly, and we speak our truth. And I think there's a level of trust there that allows that conversation to happen. And so that's something that we do. But we have weekly maintenance, bi-weekly maintenance meetings. So every 2 weeks, I meet with them on Monday. We have a scheduled time, and they bring issues that they might be seeing, and I bring issues that I'm working through. And so then what we do is we proactively try to head off any issues before they become formal grievances. Then with our supplementary groups, all our auxiliary groups, I go out once a month with the union representative. There's actually a Camaria coffee now in Grosse Pointe. I was shocked. And he loves to go there. So every month we go, we have a cup of coffee, we connect. Sometimes we're talking about issues that we're having, but the most important thing is we're building that relationship so that when the difficult conversations come, there's an element of trust built into that. There was a second part to that, Nasri?
It was just provide the example.
An example?
In the role you play, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about grievances and I would just let that go.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering all these 22 questions. I know it's very tedious. So we would like to take a few minutes now to provide you with the opportunity to ask any question you might have for the board. So.
Well, first, again, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with the board, to highlight some of my skills and talk about the possibility of what the future could look like. I'm deeply rooted in Dearborn. You know, my branches have spread out to some of the suburbs, but I've always had my heart here, and this would be a wonderful opportunity for me to come back, and so I appreciate that. When you think of Dearborn schools, what's something that you love or something that you're most proud of?
For me, personally, growing up in Dearborn, the diversity of our city and our schools. So seeing the culture and the ability to be able to learn and grow as a person. And we have amazing staff and amazing administrators. You know, it's just, you know, for us, it's, you know, taking the next step. But me personally, the roots that I have here makes me proud of where, you know, of our schools. And it just, you know, it's that pride that we all have in our schools. It's very important. So there's a lot of pride for our community in our schools, our individual schools, our district as a whole. So.
Salina, is that where you went to school?
Went to Salina Wildcats. You know, Salina is very dear to me, but all Dearborn schools are dear because the success of one school means the success of others as well. So, Trustee Moussa?
Yeah, the best times for me are definitely graduations and seeing the families and students and overjoyed with their accomplishments, and also seeing where our students are. I was in Florida once and somebody yelled Fortson, and that was just a pride moment for me that I got to know that person to be a medical doctor in Florida. So. And has graduated from Fortson. So the products that we produce at our schools are definitely those students who go out and do great things. And obviously you're a great example. So that is the joy for me in Dearborn schools.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Moussa, sir?
To me, you know, we are this community, and it's something that I think we should look for in a leader to recognize too, is that this community is constantly under attack, right? We're like a buzzword on, I won't name any news networks, but we're a buzzword in a lot of places. And yet in light of all that and in the face of all that, we are so resilient here. And we are so refused to ever be downtrodden. We're always very proud of who we are. And I moved here on purpose, you know, like I wanted to be here. in this community. As growing up as like the only Arab kid in my school, I wanted to come here to Dearborn. Everyone, you know, Trustee Moussa talked about it too. Just about every kid that is coming through our schools, and it's been this way for a while, is making history in their family in some way. You know, sometimes they're the first high school graduate in their family. Sometimes they're the first one to go to U of M or the first one to go to an Ivy League school. And so this consistent history making that we're doing all the time is something to be really proud of. We have a lot of work to do. I want to make it so that every graduate is making history, but we do something really special here. I frankly think one of the reasons that we get attacked is because there might be some other people jealous that, you know, we're doing the American dream maybe better than everybody else. But I'm very proud of who we are as a community, of our resilience and how we're always making history. And I think that we're really lucky. The 7 of us are lucky to be on this board, and all of us are pretty lucky to live here. And we see it in the kind of people who want to work here. We're attracting extremely talented people who want to have leadership positions in our community. We saw it with the college, and we see it now. So, you know, that's what I'm most proud of who we are. And no one ever asks what's Dearborn. Apparently, everybody knows what we are, and they've heard of us some way, good or bad. But I'm very proud of that.
I'd like to.
Oh, go ahead, please.
This is Trustee Czar's 2 for 2 on giving me that segue at the end of his answer. So thanks. I agree with everything, especially, you know, for our students. There's a feeling and a sense of the pride that comes from the community. There's the sense of belonging here, and a sense of ownership. But I want to touch on that last fact is we get that from our staff, our administration, and our parents too. And I think that's what makes us even more special. The staff and administration that we have, even our parents, have so much pride in our schools and our district that carries on. You know, of course, as a graduate from my elementary, middle, and high school, like I'm going to carry that pride. But there are parents here who didn't get that opportunity, or, you know, came here after the fact, but they carry that through their children, through our students. There are faculty here from outside of the district who travel here, who have just as much pride in where they work as where they grew up. And that's awesome to me. I think that's what helps push us over the top, and I'm not sure you'll find that, you know, in any other place.
Trustee Petlicoff.
Okay, I'm going to do a couple different things about what I like. First, I'm going to touch upon the fact that my husband's family was here for generations. His grandfather immigrated here from Macedonia in the 1920s and was a factory worker at Ford Motor Company. And my husband is now 77. He had his generation and after generation of relatives who grew up and went through. My husband is still a proud Fordson Varsity Alumni Club. He's the secretary of the club, and amongst many other things. So one, we still have, while we have a newer generation that have moved here, we still have many community members who had planted roots here decades ago and have raised families who have remained here. We still have family here in this city. So that's number one. Number two, I've been involved in both city politics and the school district for decades as well. And one thing we always discovered was that a lot of people look to us as the elite example of how to do business, whether it was from the city perspective of how we organized our police department and our response people, to the school district and all the unique programs. We have had 2 superintendents go to state superintendency, plus one who was an interim. I don't think people remember that we had an interim state superintendent as well from this district alone. It speaks volumes for what we can accomplish here, given the community dynamics. And while we have a lot of competing challenges over the years, we've always managed to rise to those challenges and find ways to surmount issues. And we continue to want to see those successes evolve and grow.
Thank you, Pat. Mary? Now Pat is up.
I'm good.
Nothing.
President Jahmid.
Oh, go ahead, trustee Bazey.
I think in Dearborn, we have a lot of pride of when our students go through our system and they go to Ivy League schools, they become business owners and doctors and entrepreneurs, and I think it's a point of pride here in Dearborn schools. But one thing I want to touch on, and I'm going to shift, and I'm going to talk about Lori, 1927, the first orthopedic department for kids that needed that. And I think it's a point of pride in Dearborn schools that I've seen, and the more I learn, that we try to make sure that we meet all of our students where they are and make sure we have programming for that. And we do our best for all of our students. And so, the more I've learned and gone through, the more I see that. And it's 100 years, and I think we need to keep that and keep moving it forward. It's part of our DNA.
All right, any other questions for us?
I think that's sufficient.
All right, thank you. So in closing, is there anything you would like to add?
No, I appreciate it. I think I've already given you my closing remarks. I'll share with you my 100-day transition plan. I think I have the heat maps in the corner. And then I have an unofficial thing here. We did a little cute activity, my superintendent. On Valentine's Day, we had a little activity where we wrote a piece of paper with everyone's name on it. And we just passed it around. Now, what do you appreciate about that person? I think this is like 30 letters of recommendation on one sheet. It's also in that packet, so if you see that as well. So I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hamka, we appreciate your interest in the superintendent position for Dearborn Public School. The board is interviewing 6 candidates this week, and we would let you know after our meeting on Saturday, April 18th, where you stand in our search process.
Mr. Chair, can you remind everyone again, I know we did it at the first one, I just want to make sure we do it at everyone, that while we didn't do public comment here today, they can come Saturday to do citizen participation if they want to?
I think you just did.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Yes,
It's
Thank you so much.
I'd like to motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion adjourned.
So move.
So move.
all in favor, aye.
There's no need to motion.